On the 19th day, they phoned me and said she had been crying for me, and could I please bring them in a picture of myself to help calm her. I did do that and spoke with them at that time, and I've requested throughout this to get written reports on how Aine is doing. Last night at about 11:15 in the evening, I received my first report. Aine is carrying the picture of me around with her, and they have added a third drug.
Added a third, so they're medicating her. Was she on any medication when she lived with you at home?
No, Aine does not need medicine. In the home, she's a very well-behaved girl.
So what are they prescribing?
Well, in under 70 hours, in fact, after her removal, she was removed on a Thursday. By Sunday, she was on drugs. She's on Respiridol. She's on Seroquel now, and another one with a very long name like cloprazamine.
What are these drugs designed to do?
They're all antipsychotics.
Antipsychotics, but your daughter is not a psychotic.
No, not at all.
Heartbreaking story that you heard about last week on The Source. Father of an autistic child losing his daughter, saying that the BC ministry that took her did so on shaky grounds. Not much of a reason for that. I've heard of stories like this before, and it becomes heartbreaking. I've heard of stories of parents who a child becomes injured and they become terrified because they are investigated immediately by social services. Dave Quist from the Institute of Marriage and Family Canada joins us now. Dave, you're the executive director. Did I finally get it right?
You got it right.
Got your title right finally. It's a bit of an odd position for social services to be in. If they don't act soon enough and a child is injured, we condemn them.
Yes.
But when they take children away and it appears that there's no reason, we're condemning them as well.
Right.
Where do people draw the line? I would always, you've got to draw, you don't want to be too cautious and watch a child die, but you don't want to be interfering with families.
They're between a rock and a hard place a little bit on this one. Unfortunately, this case just tugs at our heartstrings. You know, here's a young autistic girl, 9 years of age, but developed far less than that, has the care of her father, runs away from home into a couple of yards away, and is suddenly taken away from her father altogether. Even though the dad is a single dad, the mom, the divorced mom in this case, she is very supportive of dad in this case as well. This child doesn't have any history of being abused mentally, physically, emotionally, has the full support of her immediate family around her, and yet social services in this case, or the ministry in British Columbia, has taken this child away. There's tragedy on many levels here. There's tragedy on first of all, this child is missing from her dad. The dad is obviously heartbroken by this whole situation as well. But now there's the tragedy of the length of time it's taking for this to actually be dealt with. If there was a hint of something going wrong, we could understand perhaps an intervention by the ministry. However, even after this first hearing that's coming up, or maybe it's just occurred, the next scheduled hearing, I understand, is September. So this is going to drag on for
months.
It's over 2 months before this may be resolved, and that's only a maybe at that particular time.
And that is the heartbreaking thing that I've heard from other parents who've gone through this, is that once children's aid societies or government ministries, whatever it happens to be called where you live, dig their claws into you, they will not let go.
Right.
Even when there's a mistake. There was one case here in Eastern Ontario. A child injured their leg coming out of one of those play swings that we designed for very small children. Child got its leg stuck, it popped. They were convinced because of that the mother abused their children. And they actually had their children taken away from them for months at a time, again, over a playground incident that happens time and again. How do you deal with this? How do you fight back against it?
You know, it's almost impossible to fight back against the system. I actually contacted somebody in the BC government today to ask, are there any updates in this case? Can you tell us anything about this particular situation? And because it's an individual case, there's a privacy laws concern and things like that, nobody's going to be able to talk about this case outside of closed doors with the father, the lawyers involved, and things like that. In the meantime, there's a little person here whose life is actually being dramatically affected.
And this is part of why I get worried about what I want to talk to you about next. And these are the calls for obese children to be taken away from their parents. Because I just see it as the government coming in with a heavy hand, which is the only kind that they have. It's just the way government operates, and taking children away because they say, well, you feed them too much, or you don't feed them the right food, or they don't exercise enough, so we're taking Johnny or Jane away.
Which is equally wrong. I mean, obviously different scenarios and different situations. However, the impact on the child emotionally can be very traumatizing, and that's not the right way to be dealing with the situation. As a last resort, this has been called to take the child away from the parents. I think there's far more involved. You mentioned several things. There's diet, there's exercise, the right foods, and so on. But there's also the upbringing of the child. Is there a genetic disorder? That may be possible in some cases. But there's also the issue of when the child returns home again, presuming they will, then has anything changed in the home? If nothing's changed in the home, then those eating habits or those exercise habits or lack thereof will just continue. So I think what really could happen here is the government could say, we'd like you as a family to meet with a nutritionist. We'd like you to meet with some people that can put your family on an exercise program, maybe not even for yourself, but because your son or your daughter is in a way in excess into putting their personal health at risk. But to actually withdraw the child from the home, in my opinion, is not the best scenario at all.
Yeah, I'd be far more interested in seeing them offer something to somebody,
right.
Offer them help, because I was talking with my producer earlier, people don't know how to cook today.
Absolutely.
And they don't know how to cook. You see the rise of boxed meats, boxed foods, everything being fast food.
Right.
People have forgotten how to eat. They don't know how, so they're not taking care of themselves.
Right.
Now, to a degree, you can say, well, that's up to them. But when there is a child, and the child is being put at risk for that, there should be, perhaps there's room for an intervention. But I do not want to see government going in and ripping children away from parents.
I agree. Parents, children are raised best by their married mom and dad. We know that from many different sources of research. And this is one more example where mom and dad, if they have the right tools, the right knowledge, the right experience, they can do a great job of that. Intervention should take place many years earlier. Perhaps that's where a family physician or a teacher or somebody that's around that says, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I'll say for now, there are some things that we should be dealing with here because little Johnny, little Susie, little Amon, whoever, is actually starting to put on more weight than he should be at this point. Why don't we look at some ways to deal with that? Perhaps our education system needs to go back to some good old nutrition factors within the school system itself. We're sort of a victim of our own success. Life has become so busy. Kids are involved in so many different activities, and I don't mean just...
We've got a heck of a lot of food, even for people that aren't well off.
We really do, and especially when we consider that there are many parts of this world that don't have enough food. You know, we're eating too much food in many cases, and the wrong types of food in many cases, and not exercising appropriately, and so there's a lifestyle issue here, and government taking a child away is not going to solve that lifestyle issue.
Before you go, it's interesting you said married mom and dad is the best solution. Stats Canada, the people that said we couldn't get rid of the census, not even counting marriage and divorce anymore. Your 20-second thoughts on that? It's
a tragedy. It's looking at the wrong end of the scale here. Those things have such an impact in how we measure poverty, how we measure single-income moms, how we measure social programs, and so if we're changing policy, we need to be seeing where it starts and not just simply saying we're not going to study this anymore.
Yeah, they gave that one up on their own. They're upset about the census. Amazing. Dave Quist, thank you.
Good to be with you.